Hey, what's happening, model making gangsters? It's me, and yes, I am back again for yet another video. I think this is like the third one in less than 10 days, maybe. If it seems like I'm making a lot, it is. That is the case. It's just a weird sort of situation right now where I've finished two projects in the last couple of weeks and am starting a third one. So I just have lots of things I want to say, so hopefully I won't be wearing you guys out too bad. At any rate, this episode is one that I have been waiting to make for a long time, 6 months to be exact, because this is the video summary of the Revell 132nd pa-18 Piper Super Cub, which has affectionately, sort of, in my mind, come to be called the Piper Stupid Cub. This has been a wrestling match. This kit has just been a real heartbreaker. One day, one of my friends asked me what it was like, and I said, it's kind of like a stripper with a cocaine habit. Looks good, seems like lots of fun for a little while, but then you realize it's got some serious issues. And that's just the way this kit has been. It's been a love-hate thing, and the result is kind of that way for me. I feel like it's kind of a turd. It looks good from 10 feet away, but that's that stripper thing. And it was a wrestling match to get to that point. So I don't have a lot of great things to say about the kit. But before I get into all that, let's take a look at some pictures and see what I actually managed to accomplish with it. Okay, here we go. I think what I'll do is kind of give you sort of my overall impression of the kit, and then I'll just, kind of talk about a few specific highlights that sort of stood out for me along the way, both good and bad, because it wasn't all terrible. But to begin with, this kit is what Revell considers their skill level 5, their most difficult skill level. And it has right at 100 parts. And I believe that in looking at the literature on the back of the Revell box that they give their skill rating based on the number of pieces. That's absurd. In fact, if they could give this one a skill level 9, they should. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Maybe 3. The first reason is one that probably would be there regardless of who made this kit. And that's just because of the design of this aircraft. About the only thing that a Piper Cub has in common with the warplanes most of us are used to building is that it's got a propeller and wings. The overall configuration of the aircraft is far different. For starters, that it's a high-wing aircraft. But where it really gets gnarly because of the design is in the canopy. You can see that there's just a lot of glass on that canopy. And you have to construct it around the framework of the aircraft. And so that makes a number of things difficult. Makes the assembly process a little bit challenging, and it definitely makes the painting process challenging. And I didn't go exactly by Revell's instructions. I'd read lots of things online. I did not make the mistake that some people do of thinking that you can wait until you've got the wings on to add the side glass right here, because you can't. You have to put it in before you put the wings on. Otherwise, you have a real problem on your hands. But the glass is one of the real challenges, and I really got bogged down on the cockpit in general, and then in figuring out the best way to assemble it and mask off all that glass, and that definitely was one issue. Another issue that just is a part of the design is all of this strut work and the way that the landing gear goes together. I mean, look, Revell actually did a pretty decent job with that stuff in most ways, but there's just no way around that being a challenge to paint and assemble those delicate parts. And fortunately, I was able to get through all of it without breaking anything or losing my mind. Well, actually, not totally true. This landing gear section here, this is all one piece, and it came apart right here in the middle. But that wasn't the end of the world, so not too big of a deal. Now, what makes it way more difficult than it has to be, even in spite of even with the aircraft design bugaboos accounted for, is the fit and the engineering of the kit. And that kind of gets broken down into two categories. One are just pure fit problems that are caused by poor tooling and quality control. And those are things like the fact that there is not a lot of visible flash on the kit when you first go to look at it, but when you really start looking closely at parts that are going to have a parting line witness along an edge, like these struts, like every one of the round sections on this landing gear, there was a significant witness line that had to be finished off, and it was a huge hassle. And it also totally screwed up the fit of things like the wheel to axle relationship. It was terrible. I spent way more time than you really should have to just getting these wheels on there, and I ended up putting them on with a wad of epoxy just to make them strong and make sure that they'd hold their position. But the other issue is just purely about engineering. There are a couple of things that they do pretty well, like the way that the wings go on. They've got a spar that goes across here. It's actually one piece with this clear window that you can see right here. That's a clear piece that's actually about this long that extends into the wings, and it's pretty stout. But the fit was terrible. Just imagine that you've got this long, skinny tab that slides into this wing. I had to remove material from all four sides of the tab on both sides in order to get the thing to slide together. And the slot that it goes into right here is a curved slot. It basically follows the shape of the airfoil. So it was a real pain in the ass. And again, I just, somebody like Tamiya would have made that work without all of the drama. Another major disappointment was in the fitment of the sheet metal on the nose, and you can see it's terrible. There's absolutely no support structure for this cowling. You basically have to figure out how to glue all of the three parts, the top, the bottom, and the nose. You've got to get them on there and get them lined up well enough that the propeller shaft comes out of the middle of the hole in the nose piece without any framework to hang it off of. And it didn't happen. I ended up drilling the hole in the propeller overly large so that I could glue it on off center to the camera left, just so that it would appear to be in the right spot once I put the spinner on. Those were the kind of fights that I had all the way through this process. In fact, of the 98 or so parts that are in this kit, I had to fight with literally every single one of them, with the exception of the wing halves. I think they were they were painless, and I did them early on, and that fooled me into thinking that the rest of the kit was going to be just as smooth. Wow, talk about a false sense of security. Another major engineering absurdity was the way that the horizontal stabilizers get attached. There is, or in the original, there is a plastic pin that's about 40 thousandths in diameter. That's 1 millimeter for you Euro guys, right here, and a couple of small pins right here. And those mate with holes in the fuselage. Well, they do once you do a little drilling. And that's the only thing that holds the load of this 1.5-inch long lever arm in place right here. And I put them in there with Tamiya Extra Thin, and there was no support. I mean, they would sag almost all the way down to the workbench. And so I put supports under them. I let it cure out. And then I let it cure for about a month while I worked on the ME262. And when I came back to it, these horizontal stabilizers were flopping in the breeze like, butterfly wings. It was ridiculous. And I immediately snapped one of them off while I was doing some other bit of work on here. So I went ahead and broke the other one off and drilled out the holes in the fuselage. And I did a really ridiculous job of drilling a hole into each of these stabilizer pieces along the edge here, just underneath the leading edge. And I put a piece of stainless steel tubing that goes all the way through from here to here, and it's all glued in with epoxy. So, it's pretty stiff now. There's no doubt about it, but man, you talk about a wrestling match that got ugly. That definitely did. But hey, I guess all's well that ends well, and there's certainly the argument to be made that was a good test of my modeling skills. And I have to say, if that's what turns you on, this is a good kit for it, because I used every bit of modeling skill that I have ever possessed in my entire life on this thing. And you know what? Maybe that's why I'm so pissed off about it, because all of my modeling skills were not enough to turn it into the result that I truly hoped for. And it's an unforgiving type of project, because you've got a lot of, everything is hard edged. I wasn't intending to do any weathering. I wanted it to be, I wanted it to look like a real freshly restored Piper Cub. And what I ended up getting, I think, was closer to an original Piper Cub with a few miles on it. But again, hey, not too big of a deal. So just a few highlights about what I built into it. In no particular order, I did the rigging with the Easy Line, one of my favorite things, as well as some silver wire on these control linkages on the wings and on the rudder. I did a good bit of detail wiring right here behind the engine using lead wire and a few bits of paraphernalia from my 1/32 P51 sprue, just to kind of put some, I just wanted to busy it up right there behind the engine block, because in the real aircraft, that space is pretty full of plumbing and gizmos. And I also put some foil on top right here to represent the insulator blanket that goes there, which was convenient because that hid the fact that the cylinder head piece didn't fit the cylinder heads themselves. It was ridiculous. And I added one of the things that is probably my favorite of any that I've ever glued to a model of any kind, and that's this removed from before flight tag. These are micro textile from HGW, and they are just so cool. I weighted the wheels because these bush tires definitely are soft and spongy. I did that by just heating them over a candle and then flattening them on the surface of my anvil. And that might have been a little reckless, but it worked out okay. You're not going to be able to see inside very well, but I spent a lot of time and effort detailing the cockpit because I knew that it was just going to be, highly visible. There are no seatbelt kits for this model, so I got the HGW micro textile ones that are supposed to be for the Feisler Storch, which is basically the German Piper Cub. So hey, it all works, and I was pretty pleased with the way that they come out. The instrument panel, which you probably, if I can move this close without bumping the camera, you might be able to see it, but probably going to have to resort to just looking at the photographs. Anyway, the instrument panel was a joke, and I knew it was going to be highly visible, so I found a company in the UK called Aeroscale, and what they make are, I think I might have talked about them in one of my previous videos, but they make brass photo etch gauge bezels in 1/32 and 1/48, and they're incredible. They're so beautiful. I should have got them out here to show them to you, but anyway, they give you a guide that tells you, this is the altimeter, this is the tachometer, this is the turn and bank indicator, and they're incredible. And then you get a decal set that also has the same references, and so you can build an instrument panel gauge by gauge. And so I had a picture of the original Piper Cub dashboard, and I just filed off the molded in detail, which was next to none, and I assembled an instrument panel gauge by gauge. And it's one of the things about the finished result that I am most proud of. Really pleased with the way that came out. I think that's about it for all of the extra stuff that I did. It certainly felt like a lot more effort than it took to just now tell you about it. I did print some decals of my own for this. I felt like this Piper Cub decal on the tail was essential, and I printed that. I also had a little bit of a go-round with the number. You guys may have figured out that this is a custom tail number with my initials and my old motocross racing number blended in there. I originally had a vinyl mask made for these and used it as a stencil to paint them, and that should have been painless, but I wasn't happy with the edges. There was just too many little goobers, and so what I ended up doing was creating a decal to go over the top of it that basically just was the edges. And that pretty much solved the major problem, but it also created another problem in that they didn't lay down just perfectly on every part of the aircraft that I used them. Sort of got tongue-tied there. Like right here, if you look real close and if you run your finger across it, they are kind of sticking up, and you can kind of see that. But hey, overall, that's if that's the worst flaw that's easily visible, then I suppose I can live with it. So anyway, that's about it. That's pretty much the rundown. I can't believe that I could condense 6 months of anguish into that 15 minutes of gabbing about it. So anyway, there it is. Okay, there you have it. That is the rundown of the Revell 1/32 pa-18 Piper Super Cub, and I hope that was interesting for you guys. And if you're thinking about building this kit, hopefully that all of that will be good information that will maybe reduce the size of your drama. If you are thinking about this kit, I would say go for it. I mean, the Piper Cub is such an iconic aircraft, and even though this kit is a heartbreaker because it's not the best kit out there, and there's so much opportunity for detail work, and nobody makes any photo etch or resin or anything for it. I would still say it's worth doing. I mean, it'll challenge you, it'll piss you off, But like I said, it's the only one out there in 1/32nd, and it's such an iconic aircraft. And if you want to have, those kind of planes in your collection, this is the egg you got to break to get an omelet. And sometimes that's just the way it goes. And who knows? Maybe over time somebody will see fit to develop some aftermarket detail accessories for this kit, because that would be amazing. They could replace the entire cockpit pretty easily and make life a lot easier and the result a lot better. Same with the engine and all of that bit. So who knows? Maybe that'll happen. But in the meantime, we just keep soldiering along. At any rate, as always, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me and watching all of this. And until next time, much love.